Hey, welcome to the season finale of the J&Z podcast. We're really excited. We're here to review Winter Soldier with our returning guest, Anthony Palmer, and it's going to be a fantastic episode. I hope you stick around.
Don't forget about the giveaway.
Of course, the giveaway. We're doing a giveaway at the end of season 1 here, so to be enrolled in the giveaway, make sure to like the video, be subscribed to the J&Z podcast on YouTube, leave a comment down below with your favorite movie of all time. We're going to collect everyone that's entered. We're going to give away a t-shirt with the logo. We're going to give away a mug with the logo. And then we're going to give away a Fandango gift card for a movie theater near you.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
Stay tuned for the episode. We're going to get started here in the next couple minutes. Adios.
Perfect.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
You're in big trouble, though, pal. I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast.
You eat pieces of shit for breakfast?
This guy's either gonna think here's another kid with a fake ID, or here's McLovin, the 25-year-old Hawaiian organ donor. Okay, so what's it gonna be?
I am McLovin.
Hello,
Why don't you want to talk to me?
who is this?
You tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
Welcome back to the J&Z podcast. This is episode 19.
19 weeks.
19 weeks. We're closing in on episode 20.
That's going to be wild.
That's going to be insane. We are choosing to go down a very slippery slope yet again. We dabbled here once before, and this is specifically the Marvel Universe.
Yes, it is.
And we did, what movie did we do?
Captain America, Winter Soldier.
No, that's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
I was talking about previously.
Oh, previously? Well, we've done Civil War. Not Civil War. Oh,
Avengers, right?
Yeah, Avengers.
And that's, ladies and gentlemen, why we have Anthony here.
Yes.
Anthony is our resident Marvel expert to join us back for Winter Soldier. And I am very curious, both of your guys' opinions on how this movie ranks within the entirety of the Marvel Universe. And maybe let's just get right into it, because you said something in particular earlier that I was curious about, which was what followed this movie was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you say? It was like a Toy Story quote?
It was I think it's in Toy Story 2, if I remember correctly. But it's like the scene where I think it's like a dream sequence in the movie, but Andy just like hucks Woody in the trash.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
like, I don't want to play with you anymore. And that's straight up. Like, everybody was like, we went from Winter Soldier and everybody was like, yeah, this is pretty good. And then Guardians came out, and I get it. But
Yeah.
totally, like, I was still so hyped about that movie, and then not like maybe 2 months later, Guardians came out, and everybody was like, Captain America, who?
I don't want to play with this anymore.
Who's she? Like,
Yeah, and it's so funny too, because I remember watching Winter Soldier in the theaters, and I can't remember if I watched it with you guys, maybe?
I think that was before we had met each other, because I had the whole like Avengers 1 Captain America like jumpsuit.
Yeah, I would have
And
remembered
I
that.
went in that. That was actually the first Marvel movie that I went all dressed up.
That's
for.
actually what I was going to ask if all of us saw it in theaters.
I definitely saw it.
But yeah,
I definitely saw it in
I saw it
theaters.
Thursday night.
Nice. How was it?
Dude, it was it was definitely cool. I went with I think like 2 pals of mine. But I had the costume on, so everybody's like super excited about that. So that's fun, kind of getting involved in that kind of energy and like talking with other nerds and everything. But yeah, man, seeing that movie the first time in the theater just blew my mind.
It's one of those things too where it expanded upon a different character.
Yeah.
I feel like outside of Iron Man.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you consider, so I feel like it's the only one of the post-Avengers 1 movies of the like individual heroes.
Like Phase 1.
Because it was technically Phase 2.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I felt like those were like pretty much the only movies post the first Avengers that I actually really gelled with.
Yeah.
Because Iron Man 3 had its own problems. As much as I appreciate it, we don't talk about Thor: The Dark World.
No. I've never seen it.
You're not
Well, that's where they
You're not
introduced
missing
the
much.
Reality Stone, right? But
Yeah.
it's technically, it's not, it's like the Tesseract. Like the Tesseract is a space stone, but it's like not really yet because it's a tesseract. Because what did they have?
The ether was like a weird
ether.
alien liquid, and
Yeah.
at some point, like literally the joke way that they describe it in Endgame when Thor is talking about it.
Yeah,
It's like in the movie, she like touches a rock or something,
yeah.
like a space rock, and then all of a sudden she's like, "Gah!" and like isn't doing good. So they take her back to Asgard, which
Yeah.
is why we see them there in 2014
Oh,
in
yeah, yeah,
Endgame.
yeah. Okay, yeah.
But yeah, they somehow, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I did not see Thor 2, but the phases are so strange because it's like, oh, phase 1, and then it's like, no, that was phase 2. So there's phase 16, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what phase are we on?
Phase 4, if you want to be technical.
Okay.
Yeah, because now we're in like the world of the multiverse.
We're
I think
in the end game.
If you want to be technical, I know
No, we're not.
totally we're done with that now. No, I know we're technically getting like way off what we were originally talking about
Doesn't
here,
matter.
but so phase 2 begins with Iron Man 3, if I remember correctly, and then I think phase 2 is all the way up to Ant-Man, because that,
Right, yeah, because it's
and then
Infinity
I think Civil
Wars,
War
and
kicks
then,
off phase 3 up through the end of
Yeah,
no wait, Far From Home is the last one, because they do Endgame and then Far From Home, I think, is the end of phase 3, if I remember
because don't they
correctly.
do it's Infinity War and then Ant-Man and the Wasp
Mhm.
follows
Yes,
that? Because I remember they
yes.
like send him in, like they're on top of that roof or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Okay, I'm ready to come back."
And everyone's just like,
And then it cuts back. Yeah, and they're all like, "Yeah, it's crazy." Okay, well, before we get too far, let's go ahead and play our
box office game.
Take it away, Czar.
All right. So 2014, this is the box office worldwide, especially for our Belgium listeners.
Got to give the shout out.
You got to give the shout out. So this was an interesting year because a lot of it was comic books and just books in general.
Okay.
So
And you said 2014?
2014, and these are all, there's a few that are sequels, and no, they're all comic books and books in general.
There we go.
All
Yeah.
right.
So it was an interesting year. It was also a really good year for indie movies. Just want to throw that out there. Birdman came out. Whiplash came out.
Whiplash.
Boyhood. The movie Boyhood
yeah,
came
yeah,
out. Yeah, 2014 was an awesome year for indie movies. So I think that my pretentious self was like, actually, I don't think I'm going to go see that movie. I think the Bijou is playing Birdman. I was like, shut up, nerd. Like, we want to go see the
B-Man, weirdo.
Yeah,
Go make a movie podcast.
I will. Dad, stop yelling at me. Okay, so in no particular order, Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, which I never saw. I only saw Part 2, but it's fine. Guardians of the Galaxy, Hobbit, Battle of the Five Armies, Transformers Age of Extinction, and Maleficent.
So those are the top 5.
Yeah, top 5 worldwide.
Notice that both of the Marvel movies aren't even in that discussion, like the
True.
ones that came out that year. Damn.
Winter Soldier was in the top 5 America, like for
Yeah.
domestic, but
Go figure.
worldwide it was not.
Yeah.
But it's such a good movie.
Wait,
that
I'm
just
sorry.
like-
The country that the character is named for watched
Yeah.
went and spent
Yeah.
the most money on that movie.
I would watch the shit out of Captain Belgium. I'm going to be honest.
Oh yeah. Do you hear that, Belgium? Okay. All right. Let me hear your top 5.
So yeah, I'll go start to finish. So this is my thoughts. I'll walk you through all of it. So
go for it.
I feel like there's no way in hell Hunger Games is not number 1. I don't think there's a reality where nobody beats that. It's impossible. After that, just like Anthony said, I'm going to take Hunger Games and I'm going to throw it in the trash because I'm going to go see Guardians of the Galaxy 9 times. So Guardians at number 2.
Okay.
And then I think, after this, it's like you have your own separate fan bases. So you have The Hobbit, you have Transformers, and you
my
have
God.
Maleficent.
We've talked about that. We talked about The Hobbit and New Jersey.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
I like The Hobbit, see? And so I don't think there's a more powerful audience than Lord of the Rings in general. So I'm going to put Hobbit at 3.
Okay.
And then I think Transformers 37 beats out Maleficent, and then I'll go. So Transformers 4, Maleficent 5.
Gotcha.
So I'm a complete ding dong. So Guardians was in that lineup of the top 5.
Yeah, you can change it if you want. Like, like I can go over it again if you want.
No, it's fine. My listening comprehension apparently.
That's fine.
It's okay.
You're good.
We're getting there. It's a Monday.
Yeah, it's fine.
So yeah, I mean, I am not far off of what Jared was running there. I'm gonna make some quick switchy.
Go for it.
Anthony's like, no, regardless of what you said, Winter Soldier is number
Yeah.
1.
I don't care about the worldwide box office.
Yeah.
The only one I care about is right here.
It's America.
Not
It's
at all.
a,
Not
it's
at
a
all.
foreign
But
film.
it has subtitles.
Parasite's the worst. Joker should have won.
I hated the discourse
I know,
around that.
it was
Yeah,
awful.
it was rough.
So I walked out of Joker, real quick aside. I walked out of Joker being like, yeah, that was an okay movie.
Same.
Parasite, I actually thought about for a while after I watched it. Joker, it was like, I got done. Some guy said something that straight up made me think he was going to commit violence in a movie theater as we were heading out. And I was like, I'm going to
God.
get the hell out of Dodge. And then I went home and never thought about it again.
I had that with my girlfriend where we were talking and I was just like, yeah, Parasite and all this and I was like, yeah, Joker, and she stopped like drinking and she was like, oh my God, we did watch Joker together, didn't we? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah, good movie. Whatever. Fine.
Yeah.
Moving on. So
That was Joaquin Phoenix, right?
Yeah,
yeah. Great performance from Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes.
The movie's just very derivative.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it had Robert De Niro, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah, that's
It
right. I think,
did.
yeah. And I'm like, oh, wait, I did see that.
Yeah, right. It's one of those things where it was just like, what was that again?
Well, he also followed Jared Leto's Joker. So for me, if I remember, it was like a nice palate cleanser. in a
Yeah,
way.
me too.
yeah.
I was just happy not to see
Yeah.
the
Juggalo Joker.
Yeah, the
Damaged.
damaged.
Juggalo Joker.
Oh my God. I'm pretty sure he acted like that just because Ben Affleck's
You know
Batman
what's on
brutalized
beef?
him to the point of brain damage.
I
But
wish. I
For-
wish.
good
Okay,
Lord. But yeah, so my
top 5.
Yeah, so Hunger Games #1, especially because it was wasn't it the last movie that they
Yes.
broke into two? Yeah,
Yes.
there's no way that wasn't #1. Transformers actually at #2.
Wow. Okay.
Because those movies just seem to have like ridiculous draw no matter what.
It's true. Yeah.
Put Hobbit #3 because same thing. Like the Tolkien fan base is like
It's hardcore.
Yeah.
they are
They
ride or
are
die.
inevitable.
And then I put Guardians and then Maleficent. Because I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, I think that's actually how that kind of worked out there.
Okay.
I was
Okay.
surprised with Maleficent because I didn't see it. I didn't really hear too
didn't see
much
it either.
about it. Like,
I liked it.
Yeah,
I haven't. I did. I know. I can talk.
You're
I
good.
never saw the second one.
there was a second one.
There was.
Interesting.
I don't remember what they called it.
I have no. I had no idea. There was a
The first
second
one was entertaining though. I had a good time watching it.
That's what I heard. All right.
Okay, run us through the list.
Okay. Okay. From 5 down. Number 5 is Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1. I'm not kidding.
He's a liar. Get him.
Number 4 was Maleficent. Number 3 was Guardians. Number 2 was Hobbit, Battle of the Five Armies. Number 1 was Transformers, Age of Extinction, baby!
Okay, which was that 4? Was that
Listen to
number 4?
me. Transformers is not that good.
So that was Transformers 4, right?
Yeah.
So they already tanked it with the third one because I remember after that movie, people were like, "Okay, we're done with these, right?"
God.
And it still made so much money,
I think it's
even
because of Mark
after.
Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg was
Oh,
in it.
yeah, true. You know what's funny? I felt the most confident about that one, and I did not get a single one. Stop watching Transformers. God.
I think the one guest that got the most was my girlfriend, but that's because she's...
She nailed all of them, and yeah, it's not really fair because she's your girlfriend. So
And
she
I-
was like,
and I
I'm
told
not.
her
She's
about
exposed to this content constantly.
everything.
So one of the things I want to talk about too, just because it came up in conversation before we get back on track with Captain America. Speaking of the Hunger Games movie, how it did a part 2, I feel like that was the first time the world was introduced to a part 2 in like a
Didn't
pretty
Harry Potter do it before?
Yes.
Yeah, they had Deathly
Deathly
Hallows,
Hallows,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about that when they do a part 2?
You go ahead. You're the movie
Okay,
nerd.
so
Yeah, go nerd.
I meant that in the most loving way possible.
Oh no, totally. So I think it can be good, but it can also be like, well, I'll just wait for part 2. Like my example would be Dune. Dune has a part 2.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I think it's the beginning of the movie. It says part 1, but it's like a book format. Like it's like the sand comes up and it says part 1. So when you watch it, you're
Avatar.
like, yeah, you watch it and you're like, okay, that's interesting. Or like with the It movie, it was really big, and I think it's because at the very end, movie ends, and then it says chapter like part 1 of 2, and so
Yeah.
you walk out and you're like, I didn't even know there's going to be a part 2. That's so awesome.
That's the one that had Bill Hader, right?
The sequel did, yeah.
Sequel
But
did.
so I think that a part 1, part 2 could be good, but the problem is if you fuck up with part 1,
Right.
no one's going to want to see the second one.
Right.
Like that's something where I've noticed with a lot of the Marvel movies is that it's like, okay, well, I have to watch this because the next 3 movies are going to connect to this.
Yeah.
And I totally get the purpose of that. It's just, it's hard for me because it's like, well, I don't really know these characters.
Right.
So to that point, before I get into how I feel about the part 1s and part 2s, they're making it too much like comic books now.
Mm.
Because like I collected comic books loads when I was a kid, and then when I started going to college and I had big boy money and I was like in walking distance of my local comic shop.
Oh hell yeah!
Shout out to Emerald City Comics. I don't think they're around anymore. I'm pretty sure now it's just Nostalgia Collectibles.
Mm-hmm.
But they're great. I love them. They're fantastic. I'll have to double check that, and then we'll make sure. Even if we have to come back in another segment, because they're absolutely wonderful folks. Never steered me wrong with comics. Great
That's
people.
awesome.
So like I started collecting. And when I was doing that, it was around like the New 52 of like the DC comics,
Okay.
and Marvel was doing Spider-Verse and like all of this stuff going on, right? And if you want to follow everything, you have to keep up with so many storylines.
Yeah.
That can be a little dramatic the way I'm putting it, but ultimately, like if you're trying to take in all of these character stories and keep up with the entire universe, you're going to be reading a lot of comic books.
Yeah.
But the problem is that now it's, instead of collecting these books and it's like, oh, you know, there's a little footnote in like the main line, like they did the Avengers Infinity was one of the story arcs they were doing at that time. It was a Jonathan Hickman run. And they had little notes. It's like, oh, you know, they reference something and it's like, oh, editor's note, this was in da-da-da-da-da issue, da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
So you could go back and reference that if you were interested, like, how did this development come about? They
That's
do that
really
stuff
cool.
all the time. But with the movies now, they just kind of assume that you've been watching them the whole time. And so
Right.
everything pulls from everything else, and it's so interconnected that it's like, in order for you to understand what's going on,
Right.
most of the time you've had to watch like five other things,
Exactly,
sometimes
yeah.
multiple hours of television before you go into it.
Yeah.
Kind of like you had mentioned, I haven't seen the Eternals, but that was something where people were talking about how like there should have really been like standalone movies with the Eternals first.
I think they should have done that as a TV series.
Yeah.
See, what I really appreciate is like how Star Wars did it, where they have a Star Wars story, and it's not necessarily connected to the whole like episodes, like, you know, saga for the main thing. So, but like, it is connected, but you don't have to watch them to understand what's happening with the main storyline.
Yeah, like even Book of Boba Fett, like that wouldn't have existed without season 2 of The Mandalorian.
Right.
What's up?
Yeah.
But thank you, Mandalorian season 2. But like they still in that show touch on how Boba Fett came to be back enough to where it's like that could have existed without Mando.
Right. Yeah.
I'm glad it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
No, that makes sense. So for me, I think when it comes, and what was your opinion on the parts?
Yeah, the
like
part-
it, don't
yeah,
like
one,
it.
part
So
two.
I like it, particularly because I'm one of those people that thinks it's really important to do character storytelling right.
Yes.
And I feel like giving characters that time to breathe in a movie, especially when you have like a huge cast, like how Avengers did it. I think one of the best examples of a part 1 and 2, personally, was Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah. I would
Okay.
agree.
Even though I feel like Infinity War was the stronger movie, the payoff in Endgame was so much better because of all of the character stuff we saw in
Right.
Infinity War.
Yeah.
So I think in those instances, super great idea. Do it, please, by all means. Give me as much hours of programming as you want. I'm gonna watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's just done for like the sake of like trying
Yeah.
to build that, but it doesn't actually succeed in making those character connections, then
Right.
yeah, I'm just gonna be sitting here for however long you're making me, and I'm just gonna be like, when am I gonna care
Right.
about this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And you can't just force an audience to care.
Yeah.
No.
So I have kind of a hot take. I really don't like it. I really, really don't like it. And I think it's because I have a sour taste in my mouth because that token fan base right here, baby. And that Hobbit movie that came out, they
Oh,
did it in
God.
parts. And so that was my first experience with
Well, because they
different
took
parts.
the whole first book and made
60
it 4 movies,
like
right?
60
Yes.
pages.
But
Like
here-
60 pages of The Hobbit, and they
Yes.
made it into like 4 movies.
So here's my problem. So I'll talk about how Tolkien writes. If you guys haven't read the books, is he's a very, very descriptive writer.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, the Hobbit hole is round and circular, and it's mossy, and it's like hearth and home, and but he goes on for pages and pages and pages. Pretty dry.
Mm-hmm.
But in the movie, what they did is they didn't add more stuff from the book. They
No.
cinematically were like, ooh, what if we just like made like a weird wizard and just like, I was like, put him in there.
Yeah.
It's like that.
What if we added
it's
a love
in
interest?
the book? Yeah, and it's like, why are you making me watch more of the movie, but you're not building any more of the book universe cinematically?
Yeah.
it just seems like filler.
Especially with adaptations.
Right.
Especially
Oh,
with
God, yeah.
adaptations.
Yeah, and it's like, I think that's why I have such a bad experience with it, because I loved it, and I'm like, I am not gonna give you like my money 3 times over
Yeah.
just for you to go into this universe and go random character, and then they'll die later, and then random character, and then they'll die later. It's like, it's the same reason why I stopped watching The Walking Dead, because you would get 9 episodes of backstory on this character. Episode 8, bang, dead.
Yeah.
It's like, why? Why are you doing this to
It's
me?
kind of like what I told you about, like with certain shows. If there's an entire episode where, like, for 40 minutes, it's all about the character. It's
Yeah.
like there's 20 minutes left for them to die.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, so what I'm curious to jump into next is where we rank Winter Soldier amongst the Marvel universe of all movies.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have an idea?
Oh, I do.
Go for it.
This is like top 5 for me, if not top 3. Like out of all the Marvel movies, like I'm excluding the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies,
Fair.
Okay.
but like everything else, this is top 3
Like
for me.
strictly MCU.
Yeah, strictly
Yeah.
MCU. This is top 3 for me. Like I.
I just dropped my pen. I just dropped my pen.
Failure.
Yeah, okay. There we go. Oh, wrong one. Just out of curiosity, what movie beats it out? Good guy?
I'd say Iron Man.
The first one?
Yeah, for me personally, just because and maybe it's nostalgia reasons, but I
Sure.
remember like my jaw dropping when he was like in front of everybody. He's like, "I am Iron Man," and then Black Sabbath.
That was
kicked.
2008?
2008.
Because
Same
The Dark
year as The
Knight.
Dark Knight.
Same years, and Kung Fu
Wow.
Panda.
Really?
Yeah.
Which is actually a banger.
The
We
duality
love
of man.
Kung-
Oh yeah, 2008 was a great year for blockbusters.
Yeah.
But no, I'd say Iron Man beats it out for
But
me.
probably not for Blockbuster.
No.
Yeah. So
I loved editing that one because I put the blockbuster video. Wow, what a difference!
Did I make the same joke on 2 separate
Yes.
episodes?
you did.
Yes, you
yeah,
did.
you did.
Yes, you did.
I'm sorry, Blockbuster. I'm not trying to roast you every time.
I think you're just apologizing to avoid.
There's the one that's still
Yes,
in state.
I went there.
They're sitting there go, listen to this podcast.
Grab more
fucking
Morbius.
guy.
Grab more Morbius.
They have 16 copies of Morbius at the last
Oh,
at the
gosh.
last Blockbuster.
I saw that.
Jesus. So okay, so
It's
you
Morbin time.
so you said that so it was Iron Man 1 for you, do you think?
I'd say so.
And then Winter Soldiers 2 or 3?
It would be 2.
2. Okay, wow. All right. What about you, Anthony?
It's his number 1. Like,
Yeah.
no hesitation. Nothing that the MCU has put out has, like, there's been all of the like bombastic stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit here and act like I didn't lose my. We talked about it. I absolutely lost my shit when like Cap picked up Mjolnir.
Right,
and
yeah.
The whole
Yeah.
Avengers Assemble and everything. And
Yeah.
there's been spectacle since then that I think is greater than what was in Winter Soldier. But I don't feel like there has been like a character study
Yeah.
quite as strong as what they did in Winter Soldier ever
agree.
since in the MCU.
Yeah. For me, it's number 2 as well. And it's another Cap movie that beats it. Number 1 for me is Civil War, I would say.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. Which it's kind of a hot take,
That's
but
a really hot take.
the reason why I like
Spicy.
Civil War so much is because I just remember being so hyped seeing the trailer where Bucky and Cap were beating the shit out of Iron Man.
Mm.
And I was like, how does that end up happening?
Mm-hmm.
And then I just remember the scene in Civil War where they think that like sleeper Hydra agent guy is going to like go basically awake all of these like other Winter
Zemo?
Soldiers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see that like they're all their heads are shot, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
huh? Disney, what are you doing? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what? Like, for me, that was such a twist because throughout Civil War, you see that scene where Bucky kills Tony Stark's parents or his dad, or his parents in the car. And it's really dark. He fucking chokes Iron Man's mom to death.
And doesn't he, if I remember correctly, he slams Howard Stark's head into the
Yes.
steering wheel, doesn't he?
And that guy plays it back on the monitor, and you're just watching like Tony Stark. Like, can just picture that for a second. Picture that for a second.
You're watching your parents get.
You're watching a gruesome video of both your parents die and killed by the dude that you're standing right next to.
You're watching a snuff film.
Yeah.
Like, that was just such a powerful scene. Everything else in the movie, like, I really did like, but just that scene in particular was like, oh my God. And then, like, the fight scene that broke out after that, and then the line just, oh my God. It's probably one of the most, like, I would say for me, I got more, like, upset than the scene in Endgame where Spider-Man dies, and he's like, I don't feel so good. And then, like, because the people were really, like, fucked up on that part. But the scene where Iron Man and Steve Rogers are fighting, and he goes, Tony, you know I have to defend him. He's my friend. And he's
So
like,
was I.
Oh yeah.
that was so.
The thing that always got me with that was the thematic through line of his "I can do this all day" line.
Yeah.
Every time we see Steve saying that, he's standing up to like some asshole, like
Right.
a bully, like a bad guy.
Right, yeah.
And then we see in that moment,
Yeah.
like even though they tried to keep it pretty neutral, like Team Cap, Team Iron Man throughout all of it, in that moment, like Iron Man is straight up the villain.
Right.
Yeah.
And they really drove that home by having Steve just disarmed, bloodied, just like, I can do this all day. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I have never hated Iron Man more than I did in the last little bit of that movie.
But I just thought it was like, they did such a good job because it's like one of the most loved characters in the entire Marvel universe. At the end of the movie, you're like, kill him. Like, his shield is like crushing. Like it was just such a good.
God, when he raises it above, it looks like he's just gonna go right for his neck after he tears the helmet off, and then he puts it in the arc.
Yeah.
Like I knew he wasn't about to completely dismember the man. Thanks, John Walker.
Yeah. But
we've all seen Falcon and Bucky, right?
No, I've not.
My bad.
We're good. Don't worry about it.
No. But yeah, Civil
Someone's
War.
upset in our
really
comment.
good show. Really good show.
We'll need to watch it for sure. But it's just that scene in particular because the whole movie teases at like what happened because that guy, what was his name again? The Hydra Zemo. He is like, he keeps asking me like mission report, blah, 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 like that date, and no one tells him. And then finally he like infiltrates and is the one like talking to Bucky in that room and like has the red book and like basically awakes as Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think like just barely beats out Winter Soldier because the Winter Soldier 2 for me, my favorite scene, which we can get into next, is where Tony doesn't have his like suit on and he has to like fight him in that like breezeway.
Oh, in Civil War,
yeah. I was like, oh, it's so good. It's the
When
first time you
he's
see
got
like
the little glove.
yeah,
that
it's
was
like
pretty
the
dope.
what's the technology he uses?
Nanotech.
Yes,
There we go.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's sorry, that was kind of a tangent. I'll get
No,
off
you're
the
good.
soapbox,
You're
but
good.
Nothing wrong with that.
it was so good. It was so good.
That's what we do. Is we tangent.
I wasn't too big of a fan of Civil War, to be honest, but
I have my if they had found some way. Okay, he's alive. If they had found some way to, I think part of the problem was that Civil War in the comics, you guys know, like that was huge. It literally changed the comics. And it definitely changed the status quo in the movies, but it almost felt unnecessary. Like I get that their whole thing was that they were trying to pull the team apart before Thanos came. Because if you had all the Avengers ready to go and Thanos is like, I'm here to rock your shit, they'd be like,
good luck.
That's cute.
Good try.
Because we even see that like at the end of the movie in Endgame, like when they're all together and they're all fighting, like they win.
Yeah.
But
That's kind of where I stand too. Like the comic book is just reading the comic book. I think I went into it with way too high of expectations.
Maybe that's why I liked it because I've never read the comic book.
it definitely it felt like it was weird to me, especially because like I found out originally before they wanted to do Civil War, before they're like, oh, why don't we adapt this?
Yeah.
They were gonna do another story arc. It's like the Mad Bomb story arc from I want to say the 70s or 80s.
Interesting.
But it's this really cool arc where like I don't remember the villain off the top of my head, but somebody straight up like uses a biological weapon and forces like the actual American populace to turn on each other, and Captain America has to try and navigate like fighting civilians and like trying to defeat this bad guy. And
That's
like
like
what do you do when the bad
DC-esque.
guys are literally the people you're here to protect? Like
Yeah.
I want to watch that.
yeah, that would have
Yeah.
been so interesting.
That would have been
Please.
And then they're like, hey, Robert Downey Jr. wants another paycheck. Can we make this work?
good. Yeah.
And yeah, I have my own opinions about how I don't feel like there was quite enough Steve in Civil War.
Yeah.
Because they had to balance all the other characters, and that's
Right.
fine. But given that it was the third Captain America movie, I would have appreciated it being a little bit more
Yeah.
Cap focused.
When I think segueing into Winter Soldier, like for me, something that I really, really appreciate is watching a trailer, getting really fucking hyped,
Yeah.
watching the trailer, and then just like waiting for that scene and that build up. Because I remember Winter Soldier specifically, you see him like running on this dark rooftop, and he just like hucks his shield, and then you just see the steel arm just catch it.
Oh my god!
And then it was like September, blah blah blah. And I'm like, when is this coming out? Like it was so that was it was the first time I think comic book wise where I was like, I don't care when this comes out, what I'm doing, I'm going to be there. Like and then you saw it in the movie; it was just as powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I really appreciated about it, because I mean they literally took the name from the story arc that they adapted,
Right.
to the point where it's kind of controversial because they actually didn't, if I remember correctly, they did not pay like any royalties to Ed Brubaker, the guy that actually wrote it.
Oh
Ooh,
no.
yikes!
Yeah, it kind of sucks. The MCU as a whole is kind of definitely screwed over like comic book creators,
For
Yeah.
sure.
but.
Yeah.
That's a business Marvel thing.
Hi, I'm
I think
Stan
it's-
Lee.
Exactly. Like I think it's
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah,
I think it's wrong, but I don't want to get too into the weeds on that.
yeah,
But so like when they were like, yeah, we're this one's going to be the Winter Soldier. Like pretty much anybody that knew who the Winter Soldier was like, okay, so like what's the surprise here? So like
Right.
actually having that Shield Hydra twist, I feel like kind of saved it, because like
I agree.
I
Yeah.
went into it knowing like when I saw Winter Soldier on that rooftop, first thing I was like, oh, that's Bucky. I know who this is.
right.
So I was like, where's the mystery going to come from here? And then as soon as they're like, hey, they were secretly Nazis the whole time, I'm like, oh shit, okay,
Yeah, right?
There it is.
Okay.
There it is.
There's
Yeah.
the mystery. Yeah.
Grab me. You got me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I liked how it wasn't like a fake out.
Right.
But they found a way to still keep it engaging, even
Yeah.
if you already knew where the character was going from there.
Which is hard to do because I feel like you are trying to appease different audiences because you have the
Yeah.
hardcore comic book nerds that are like, Captain America only took 3 breaths and not 4. during
Excuse
the
me, but on
fight
page
scene.
4 of issue
Yeah.
639, he
sir,
actually
Yeah.
says...
But then you have like the cinematic viewers that are like more explosions, more shield throwing, more fight scenes, which candidly is me.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how do you really appease both audiences? And I think that in particular was perfect because I didn't know it was Bucky. And so the whole time I'm like, Bucky.
Yeah, same.
So like
you had
my-
the same reaction when he pulls his mask off.
Yeah.
He goes, Bucky? You were like,
Oh.
yeah, me too.
Yeah, right?
yeah. What? Yeah. My brain was just melting. And so, yeah, I think that this one in particular did a great job, like providing to both audiences without pissing anyone off.
Yeah, I think so.
It's hard to walk that line, especially like you said with the MCU. I feel like they particularly have done a good job with it.
Yeah.
I know you're a DC guy, but I don't think they've done a particularly good job with that. They're
I
either too
can't-
source material, or they're like,
Hands are tied.
we're gonna have Joss Whedon make the Justice League now.
Yeah.
One or the two.
Yeah.
But they almost always succeed in this balance of like giving enough crumbs to like the comic book fans that we can
Right.
be like, I recognize that. That's cool. Yeah, you held true
Right.
to that, but still taking an interesting new spin on it, even
Yeah.
with like something as broad as like Infinity War and Infinity or in Endgame.
Yeah.
That was like an adaptation of, I think it's the comic line. I think it's Infinity Gauntlet is the original story,
Right.
where Thanos gets the stones, and then
Yeah.
Infinity War, if I remember
Oh,
correctly,
okay,
is
yeah.
when they actually like fight back against Thanos after
Right.
the fact. But like even the way that they adapted, like his motivations are different,
Right.
and they make it a lot more compelling. Like you're still like, oh, this is like the cold, calculating Thanos that I'm used to, but
Right.
instead of him trying to appease the Mistress of Death, it's like, oh, he's trying to be like a universal savior.
Yeah.
By like, so it's a different motivation, but it's one that makes a little bit more sense for a non-comic book audience.
Right.
Well, this is what created, I feel like a lot of people actually ended up getting more into the comic books because there was such a lag between Infinity War and Endgame that people were just like eating everything up, like Captain Marvel, like and there was such a weird argument that came out, and I guess I have an opinion on it, but like people, it was a massive Reddit thread, which is a dangerous place. They said that Thanos was an anti-hero, which...
Oh, like the Thanos was right crowd?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
my
like...
favorite people.
Yeah, well, so like, for those of you that don't know, the audience, an anti-hero is basically like, and maybe you guys can take a whack at it too, but my understanding is basically like, I'm going to do like whatever I need to do for the greater good, in a sense, kind of. But then you also have anti-heroes, which I think is a better example, is like Deadpool. Like Deadpool to me is a really good anti-hero because he's kind of like on his own agenda in a way. Similar to like we were talking about earlier, like Jason Todd from DC, if you know Red Hood.
Red Hood is a great one.
Spawn,
I think, is probably the best example of an anti-hero.
Yeah.
Because he is like, at his core, like he's fighting against the forces of evil, but he does it with a lot of guns and demonic powers, and there's a lot of people that die.
Yeah.
But it's like in the service of the greater good. Like I feel like that's,
My first thought is Punisher as kind of like a vigilante anti-hero.
And Batman, I think, even falls into a potential anti-hero.
Depends upon how much he's beating them up,
Yeah. Like this last movie that came out.
Anti-hero,
Definitely anti-hero.
100%
Like the
anti-hero.
scene, and God, it was so awesome watching it in the theater because the echo of like the punch, where he's like fighting up those gang members, and it's like he punches him one time, the guy falls. I'm like, oh, nice. And then he starts beating the shit out of him. I'm like,
he's in a coma. He's in a coma. He's in a coma.
Or when they strategically don't show that last guy's face when he beats the hell out of that dude when he's on adrenaline.
Yeah, I was sitting there going, this is the Batman movie I want.
Exactly.
Yeah. So back to Winter Soldier. I think favorite scene, right, was kind of what we were
going towards.
I think that's what we were working towards.
So something that I really liked about this movie, and by the way, it's brutal. There's a huge
really
body count. Like people are just getting shot, and when Cap kicks a couple of the people over the boat, I'm like, do they know how to swim?
No. Well, can they swim with all of the gear they have on?
When your nose is in your brain, can you really swim?
Yeah, when you consider they did like a triple backflip falling off of the boat because of how he kicks them, like the sheer force of that man's
first of all,
legs
does
sending
he
them yeeting into the abyss. Like,
Does he have a rib cage still, or his lungs intact?
No, that man is DOA.
Yeah.
And just like, I just loved how kind of with Bucky, like when he's trying to find Natasha and he's just gunning down people, but when he takes a little explosive and he just slightly goes boink and it like bounces like a little rock.
On the little video or the audio recording she left.
Yeah, but just like just so many cars are just blowing up. Or with Nick Fury in the car when he's like, what works in this car? Air conditioning, fully operated. Like, and just like all the cops surrounding it and trying to get into it. But I think my favorite scene is when they go to that location, and that's when the scientist is like, well, in 1855 when SHIELD, it was just
That's
like
a great voice.
It's just so like it's eerie. Like they're both
really
just like
eerie.
listening to it, and it's showing like all the back, like the footage from the 1940s, but then it's also showing like the Nazis. And when he punches the one and the other monitor,
over.
it's just
as
like,
I was saying,
I'm right here, Steve Rogers.
I like that scene a
it's so
lot
cool.
because it reminded me, and here I go back to DC, of Brainiac.
Yeah.
Brainiac was one of my favorite villains of all time, and that I was like, that shit I can get behind.
It's
That
just
was
so cool. Like, just like, it's just like barely any music, and some of the music was just like, I was watching it.
just
I thought,
eerie strings.
Yeah, I thought someone was like knocking on the door because it's just like, boom, boom, boom.
The thing that killed me about that was when they literally started going into, because especially the way that they present Hydra in this movie. Like obviously when we first see Hydra, it's like, okay, you guys are literal like space Nazis, like holy shit.
Yeah.
So like it, you dealt with that, and it's like the standard German villain, kind of thing you get. But the way they presented them as like Hydra believing they were a force for order and shit, like that was spooky.
That was scary.
I think that's why I liked it so much. I was like,
because during that whole section, like you remember the line where I think I'm paraphrasing here, but it's like, he talks about how Hydra had to breed enough chaos to get people to voluntarily give up their freedom in exchange for oh my god,
chills.
it's
chills.
so prescient. It's so prescient for like everything, even in real life. Like it's
and when the compound blows up, where he's just like, "It was good to see you, Steve."
Oh, we are both of us out of time. And then it hits.
Oh my god, I
really,
loved
really
it.
good.
I loved it so much.
So, okay, this is the problem I'm going to have with my favorite scene. It's because in my mind, Civil War and Winter Soldier are like...
They are.
So tell me if this is from Civil War, because it might be, but the scene where Steve is in the elevator...
Nope, it's this one.
No.
Okay, yes.
Can you say the line?
Yeah.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
I fucking loved that scene because the second people got on, he immediately knew.
The beads of sweat? That was fucking awesome.
That was so sick.
The way that he talks when he's like guarded and he's like not trying to be too like buddy, but he's like trying to keep up his front a little bit because he's figuring out what's going. Oh, it's so they handle tension in that movie so well
good
for a superhero movie.
And it's one location. That's what I love. Is it's one location, and the fighting is so cramped.
And the only CGI in that scene is everything outside of the elevator. That was an actual practical set that they worked on.
Do you
like you
know
can obviously tell that, but it's such a departure from so many of the things that Marvel does.
Yeah.
That it's nice to see like, okay, this is a practical set. We had to get all of these extras and stunt doubles and all of these people in here to do this. Like, so cool.
So in that scene, do you know the actor's name? That was like the main...
Frank Grillo that plays
so
Brock Rumlow, Crossbones. Yeah.
Right, because he comes back in Civil War as like that very first villain that's trying to get like the dirty bomb.
That unalive himself bombs.
Yeah. And he was like, when he takes off his mask, he like that scene also was gruesome because he like rips off his mask and then kills himself. Like he literally has bombs attached to his body.
Trying to keep you potentially monetized, but all right.
Nope, yeah. That Disney said it first, but literally, and then Wanda like tries to control it, but then like all the stuff, But
and that's just the beginning of such a downward slope for Wanda too.
Yes,
bless her heart.
But that scene in particular, like I am just a fan of. So like when I think about action movies in particular and like how the fighting happens, that scene was perfect for me. Like one of the things that I wasn't crazy about, and I think Taken is a good example of this with Liam Neeson, where like you have an older actor, right, that maybe can't move as quickly or things like that. And so like the fighting is all like snapshots like this.
Oh, just cut.
And it's like you kind of get what's happening, but it's like for me, it's the sound that like really sells it.
Yeah.
And it's like there's such a specific noise that his shield makes that I'm like, that's so good.
Can we take a quick detour to talk about the audio design of that shield?
Yeah.
There is something about the just the like ringing vibrational noise that it has that it's so satisfying every time they focus on it.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is it's the same sort of sound, if I'm not mistaken, because it's vibranium, right?
Yeah.
Is if you listen to Black Panther when he's fighting, like when he goes to claw, it's not identical, but it's that same kind of ringing.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's so good.
That attention to detail too is so good. Also the fact that, real quick, I know I was talking mad shit about Civil War, but the fact that movie gave us Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther alone is a reason to be thankful for that movie existing.
Yeah. And he just has so many great one-liners in that movie, like where they're like, oh, we need to find, it's Bucky, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I hope you find him first.
Oh yeah, that was a really
and then
cool
he walks away, and I'm like,
when they're
gonna kill him
when they're being transported to Vienna.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm asking you as both I think he says as a warrior and as a king.
Yeah.
Do you really think you can keep me or keep your friend away from me? And it's like, holy shit, man. Like, you didn't really kind of have that kind of intensity, especially from a good guy.
Yeah. And it's like Steve Rogers is like,
he doesn't say, he just sits there and glares like he doesn't have a damn thing to say back about that.
Yeah. Okay, Anthony, favorite scene, Winter Soldier, take it away.
So this is kind of part of it. Like the reason it's my favorite is because it's a buildup of Steve's entire arc throughout the movie. But when they infiltrate the Triskelion, the Shield headquarters at the end of the movie before the big helicarrier battle, and he gives that big old speech, the price of freedom is high, it always has been, but it's a price I'm willing to pay, and if I'm the only one, then so be it. But I'm willing to bet I'm not. So like throughout the whole movie, we see him struggling with his identity and doing the right thing. And what does it mean to do the right thing in the modern day? Because he went, again, from fighting Nazis, which was a very easy, cut and dry, Nazis bad.
Yeah.
You know,
Nazi bad, America good.
just to make it clear, Nazis bad. We hit the table a few more times on that. But so they go from having him be in such a black and white conflict to a more modern gray area type of conflict where it's like even the body that he is participating with isn't above board.
Yeah.
Even before it's revealed that they're Hydra, it's like
He's still skeptical. Yeah.
Natasha having a different mission and him being like, if I would have told you, would you have done it?
Yeah, and the when he makes that comment when they're on the Quinjet before he actually they attack the Lemurian star.
Yeah.
When he turns to Natasha and because they're like he's getting the intel on the mission and he makes the comment. He's like, oh, so Shield's trespassing. And he turns to her and he goes, I'm getting really tired of being Fury's janitor.
Yeah.
Like,
that's right. I remember that line.
So he deals with that. And then there's the scene where he goes to the VA and he's talking to Sam after Sam has the, the group therapy session.
Great scene, by the way, especially with the whole, I swerved out of the way of a paper bag.
Yeah. And I mean that's important just on touching on some actual real life experience that I feel like doesn't get touched on very often. But when he's talking to Steve after the fact and he's like, oh, you're thinking about getting out? And Steve's like, maybe, I don't know, he's humming and hawing and Sam, looks at him and he's just like, you could do whatever you want. Like, what makes you happy? And Steve literally doesn't have an answer. He straight up says, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because
which is really fucking depressing.
And that's coming off the heels of the conversation with Peggy where he's like, for as long as I can remember, and that scene alone is just a heartbreaker. But when he does that when he goes into the for as long as I can remember, all I've wanted to do was what's right. And now I don't know what that is anymore.
Yeah. It's it's such an interesting character arc for him because you make such a great point that literally all he knows in this modern world is just being in the army and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But then he realizes that is that the right thing? And then it's just mush.
And one thing, and this is something that also ties all the way down into Endgame before we get to why this is specifically my favorite scene. But it's so a bunch of people, myself included, even initially, were kind of pissed when Steve walked away at the end of Endgame. I was kind of like, no.
Oh,
what are you doing?
I completely forgot that.
Yeah. But when you put it into frame of reference.
Yeah.
So Steve Rogers goes into the ice in 1945, and at that point, he's gone through his whole life as Steve Rogers, and then he has that 2 years where he's Captain America before he gets in the ice. And when he wakes back up, his life is just conflict. It's just fighting.
Yeah.
So from effectively 1943 up until Thanos wins in Infinity War, before Endgame happens, all Steve Rogers has known is conflict.
Yeah.
And Ultron even makes that comment in Age of Ultron where he's like, oh, what he makes some comment. I think he's like, oh, you're only a warrior. You wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah.
You don't know how to live without a war or something like that.
Yeah.
It's been a minute since I've watched Age of Ultron. So
I don't know. Not to interrupt you, but I don't know if you guys drew this connection because I just did recently when I rewatched Endgame. But the 5 years after the snap. Captain America is doing the same thing that Sam was doing.
Yeah.
And I didn't really realize that. And I watched it again. I was like, wait, because,
Yeah.
it's like, oh my God.
The VA.
Yeah. I was like, that's such a cool connection that I didn't even realize that he was basically his friend's gone, but he's basically that's what he
took up what Sam used to
Yeah.
do. I always really appreciated that. But back to that being my favorite. So you have this entire story arc where everything Steve knows is just upended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been working for Hydra this time and didn't even know. Bucky's still alive and is a brainwashed assassin.
Right.
Everything that he knew to be true is just
it's gone.
Right.
And so he's on top of him already questioning himself. So then when he reaches that point, before that speech, they're in the cave with Nick Fury and Natasha and Sam and all them. And Nick Fury makes the comment about, oh, we can try and salvage it. And he's like, no, we're not salvaging anything.
Yeah.
He's like, that's the point where Steve Rogers has made up his mind and he knows what he's fighting for.
That's when Nick Fury is like, "Oh, you're taking command, aren't you?"
Looks like you're giving the orders, Cap. But
well, yeah, that's also when you realize that Nick Fury's still alive.
Yeah.
Because like that's what I forgot when I
then,
rewatched that movie is that you think he's dead. And that I remember watching that in the theaters and thinking like, holy shit.
Yeah,
like, that was intense.
But Bucky's the one who shot him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I just loved the way that all culminates in Steve giving this impassioned speech where he's speaking truth to power. He's giving these people the information. He's like, you've been ordered to hunt me down. This is what's going on.
Yeah.
And he gives them the freedom to make the choice to fight back against Hydra.
Yeah, like when they're in the command center and he's got the gun to him and he's like, press the button.
Captain's
and he's like,
orders.
Captain's orders. And he's Abed's in that movie.
He is,
too.
yeah. Community.
I wish he would have been like, oh, cool.
I think they've had just about everybody from Community make a cameo because I'm sure the Russos were involved with Community.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So they had just about every single one of the cast members make some sort of appearance because like there's I think the Dean in Civil War. He's the guy that's like, oh, I want to put like a thermal like cooking thing in the hot dog, and Tony Stark's just like,
stop.
I'm having a PTSD minute. Can you fucking stop? Like,
I really liked the Hail Hydra because I think it's Gary Shandling is the one who comes up and he's like, all right, it was good seeing.
Especially after him in Iron Man 2 trying to get the Iron Man suit during that whole Senate hearing.
It's like it's
for as
really,
much as I hate Iron Man 2, or I don't hate it, I'm just not huge on it. But that scene in particular, just it's really satisfying seeing Robert Downey Jr. call politicians ass clowns.
yeah.
I tried to pay ball with these ass clowns. I love it every time.
The thing that I will say though that I appreciate about Marvel cinematically, because there's not a lot to appreciate about DC, is the fact that like they put a lot of power in the people, not just the superheroes. And really the only thing that you see in like Batman where that's different is because you have like the argument of Batman's not quote unquote a superhero because you have superpower or whatever. But like it's like there isn't really much happening outside of like villain and superhero in DC. I feel like
the closest to like an active. Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is he's the closest thing you get to anything.
But it's like
that's.
That. I mean, it's one character.
Yeah.
Where it's like Hydra it's just people. Like it's literally just organized people. And it's like they are arguably doing something that is more powerful than any superhero in the Marvel universe at that time that we've seen.
Well, yeah, I mean Alexander Pierce. Why am I forgetting the actor's name right now?
Robert Redford.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So his character, he doesn't have superpowers.
Yeah.
He has no fancy technology or anything. He's literally just the head of like an intelligence agency.
Yeah.
And because he's got all of those other people that are aligned with Hydra, that's what gives them the power.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to see it be pulled out from underneath them because Steve gives people the truth. And he's like, no, this is what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And I love that scene.
That poor nanny, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh,
should have knocked.
Renata? Yeah. She's like, night, night. And he's like,
yeah, that was a rough scene. The thing too, like, and this is a weird connection I'm going to try and draw, but Suicide Squad, which was, I thought, okay. A lot of people had their problems with it.
Are you talking about the newer one or the older one?
The older one.
I like
the
newer
one with
haven't seen the new
Will,
one. It's really good.
Will Smith.
That's 2016
Yeah.
version.
Yeah.
The newer one has James Gunn.
So where comes some kind of Suicide Squad, huh?
Yeah. Well, there's one scene in
said it.
particular where they're sitting on this conference table, and it's where you see the Enchantress for the first time.
Oh yeah, when it's got the hand thing.
Yeah, but I forget. It's like some type of like government agency is like, well, you can't do this because these people are like insane, and she like has a really creepy quote where she's like, have you ever thought about if Superman just like lifted the roof off of the White House and took the president?
Yeah.
Like, what would we do?
Amanda
Like,
Waller.
Yeah, it's like we wouldn't
Viola
do
Davis
anything.
absolutely kills it. For how I feel about those movies, I would just go watch them just to see Viola Davis as Amanda Waller because she kills it.
Oh yeah.
But it's like it was like, if you think about if something like that happened here in like real world, like if there was a quote unquote Superman, that's terrifying.
That's kind of the basis of The Boys. Homelander
Yeah.
is literally like evil Superman.
Yeah.
Like I really like that show, but people have been like, oh well, that's Captain America. It's like, no, Captain America, like Winter Soldier is such a great representation of Captain America because there's so much conflict happening with the character, and he just at the end of the day, it's just like he wants to do great.
Yeah.
Stephen Grant
Go for it.
Rogers has never been intended to be a vision of like what the country actually is.
Mhm.
Steve Rogers always has existed to be the ideal of what the United States is supposed to strive towards.
Mm-hmm.
And when the U.S. and his interests do not align, that he's dropped the Captain America moniker like 8 times in the comics because
Right,
he's like, what's the government doing? Okay, fuck this.
Damn
Give me
it.
the other one.
Damn it. Yeah.
Because he's become Nomad. He's become the captain. The captain became the basis for U.S. agent. Like,
Yeah.
so I get so frustrated. I get so frustrated whenever people like try and make that connection because it's like that is not what the two like badass dudes that made the character
Right.
That wasn't the
actually
goal,
intended him
no.
for. Especially when you consider like the climate that he was created in. Like it was during World War II. He was created by 2 Jewish American and like a writer and an artist.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that's the spirit of that character. Like
Right.
he's always critiqued like the shitty things the US has done in the comics. Like he's never been indicative of what the country actually is.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I got so pissed about the Secret Empire arc is that they had him become a Hydra agent.
Oh, the whole Hail Hydra.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like I think what the writer was trying to do there that I highly disagree with is that they tried to make him like emblematic of, oh, this is what's wrong with the United States right now. But Steve has always been the character to fight against that.
Right.
Yeah.
And stand as a symbol against that. That's what that
Yeah.
shield means.
Yeah.
So exactly that. Like people that try to make the comparison to Homelander and Captain America are completely wrong.
Yeah, it's just
The closest you could do is like Soldier Boy that they just introduced, and even still, like he's
It's so interesting because for me, the biggest superhero that I have always followed is Batman.
Yeah.
And I actually think there's a lot of similarities between the two because just like you said, how like people make the connection that he's a representation of America.
Mm-hmm.
Like Batman could be argued that he's like the representation of Gotham City.
Yeah.
Because of how much he like cares for it basically. But it's like the scene at the end of The Dark Knight is so powerful where Two-Face dies.
Yeah.
And like Gordon basically watches him save his kid's life, takes a bullet, and he's like, you have to chase me.
Yeah.
He's like, I have to be the bad guy because I forget the quote, but it's something super powerful. It's like, I'm not the hero for Gotham or whatever, but it's like the hero that they need basically, and they don't need me right now. Yeah. And I just thought that was super. There's a big connection there, I think, to Captain America because especially in Civil War, he's doing what he thinks is right, regardless of whatever entity is supposedly
even
over
in
him.
Winter Soldier he does that when you consider he straight up takes out like the entirety of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and it's interesting too because we talked about it just briefly, but the Sokovia Accords, he's basically like, this is why we can't sign this. But then he gets to a point where he's like, well, if you do, I can't, like, I don't agree with you, basically. And it's like, I feel like a lot of people got upset with that because it was like a government agency is telling Captain America what to do. Like, it doesn't make sense why he wouldn't follow that. And it just goes back to what you said. It's
Do
to
you
like,
do everything your government tells you to do?
right? Yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
I don't.
Yeah. I don't pay my taxes.
so here's
the door just gets this huge knock.
Captain America.
so if you were to get rid of one scene from this movie,
Oh, good question. yeah.
So my first thought was, and God rest the man, but the Stan Lee scene where he walks in and sees that the outfit's gone, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so fired." Like
Yeah.
I know why it's there, but it was one of those scenes where I was like, "Okay, all right." The car was moving really smooth. Now we're braking. Now look at that pretty tree. All right, now let's keep going. Like that's the one scene that like I just was like, okay.
Yeah, like I'm pretty sure we could have figured out where he got the costume from otherwise.
Yeah.
They show it like in this whole scene where they're like, oh, look at the costumes.
Yeah.
And it's like you got Gary Sinise doing the narration over. That's the Smithsonian narrator. It's actually Gary Sinise.
I did not know that. That's
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
I do love when the kid sees him though, and he goes,
That
and the
was
kid
cool.
just, and I'm pretty sure
I
that,
would've lost
if I
it.
remember correctly, that kid and the other ones around him, I think those are actually, I I think Anthony Russo's kids, Joe
Oh, that's
Russo's
cool.
kids.
Oh, that is cool.
They're the ones that pop up in Endgame during the Hulk scene, the dab.
Oh.
That's their kids too. Yeah.
God.
Speaking of scenes we could have cut.
Yeah.
But
Scene you could cut.
yeah, scene I could cut from Winter Soldier. Shit.
It's a hard one.
Let me give you some time to think about it because I have
Okay.
one in my
Yeah,
mind.
you go ahead.
Which is a super duper hot take. The very opening of the movie where he's running around and he's like, on your left, I would have made that shorter.
Okay.
Okay.
Because it was really long, and then he like gets in the car with Black Widow, and like I get it, but if you think about it, outside of Endgame, right, where we get the on your left, and then they all come back, like how fucking awesome that was. But just that scene in particular, like the movie, I feel like would have started much quicker and would have moved a little bit. For me personally, I think it just took a little bit to get off the ground.
So you would have cut the line on your left?
I would not have cut the line. Just that series
Okay.
of scenes would have made it shorter.
Mm-hmm.
Because
that would have been hard because at the very end when he wakes up and the Motown's playing and he's like on your left.
Real quick.
Yeah. But I'm saying like before knowing that,
Yeah.
it doesn't really have that level of impact.
Totally.
Did you guys know how they were originally going to open that movie?
No.
They were going to establish that the reason that Steve goes for those early morning runs is because he can't sleep because he has PTSD nightmares. So they
Way
were literally
better.
they were going to
Way
have like a
better.
flashback to some fucked up shit when he was with the Howling Commandos in World War II, and then he was going to wake up and then get up and go running.
See, but that makes sense though, because when we were talking about Avengers, that first scene was where you see Steve, where he's literally
Having
beating-
a PTSD episode in the middle of the boxing gym.
Yeah, that scene was so amazing.
Yeah.
Like, because then it also sets up the scene where he's like, "I don't think I'll be surprised." He's like, "I bet you $10." Like,
And then he gives him
and
the
then
$10 later. Yeah.
yeah. But it's like that scene I loved so much because it was very realistic.
Yeah.
Like anyone that served during World War II is going to have some severe form of PTSD, and it doesn't make any sense that like he would just not connect with that.
Yeah.
So I would have loved to have seen that opening
would've been great.
versus because it was lighthearted and it obviously has a lot of connections now. But then I remember watching it, like it just seemed that like it took a little bit while.
I
to,
almost feel like the
start.
pacing would have been a little bit better if they had that at the beginning and then went into the normal opening.
Yeah.
Because if you have
Sure,
this
yeah.
big bombastic, like, oh my God, because presumably it's going to be like Cap in a foxhole with like
Right.
Bucky and like Dum Dum Dugan.
Yeah.
And then there's like shells going off around them and like
Yeah.
all that. And then he wakes up and it's like, oh. And then they go into the transitioning to like the
Little
nice
more
smooth
lighthearted, yeah.
opening. Especially, I do really, one of the reasons I like the opening so much is that, so one of my biggest critiques of the Marvel movies is like, you remember, like, you have all your Batman trilogies, your Spider-Man trilogies, all that. They have a theme.
Yeah.
They have an actual musical theme that is tied with that character. Kind of like
Yeah.
the Avengers has the Avengers theme, all
Right.
that stuff. Marvel does not do that. They are so bad at doing that, and it's actually something I don't like.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I like the Avengers and the Captain America scores so much is that they so frequently reference back.
They do. Yeah.
And that's one of the things is in that beginning, like the little trumpet kind of fanfare little bit
Yeah.
they have in the beginning is a direct callback to his theme from the first Captain America movie.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that they take that and kind of morph it into, okay, so this is where we came from and this is where we're moving.
Yeah.
It establishes that this is still the same Steve Rogers that we saw back in 1945 go in the ice and then come back in Avengers, but
Yeah.
different guy now.
I think soundtrack is so key. Like my favorite scene from Infinity Wars is where Wanda and Vision are being attacked by like
Yeah.
Thanos' henchmen, and then you see Cap and Falcon show up, but it's like you just
The Avengers, they have the Avengers
but you
reveal
see
in
their
the
like
back.
silhouettes, and then you hear that because he catches the
God, when
trident.
Steve walks out of the shadow.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's happening. But yeah, so scene you would remove from the movie.
So I say this thoroughly enjoying the scene and how it's shot and all that.
Yeah,
The entire mall sequence where they're finding out
where he
the,
kisses.
that
Widow, yeah.
which like I don't necessarily have like a huge problem with because
Yeah.
it kind of ties into how like their espionage works and everything.
Right.
Like, I felt like it was a really cool way to show because you know obviously Steve doesn't know how to do stealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They established that in
Yeah.
the scene because Natasha's like, dude, chill, like
Yeah.
act natural.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that it showed their two worlds coming together where Steve couldn't be doing this without Natasha and Natasha couldn't be doing this without Steve. Like they
Right.
needed each other as partners to be able to get through this. Also, one of the things I love about this movie is setting up Steve and Natasha's friendship.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
that's one of my favorite things about the MCU is that just how like ride or die friends they are for each other.
Yeah.
Especially when he doesn't trust her. When he's like, "Are you in on this?"
Yeah, and then when she asks him after the Causeway fight scene and after everything with Bucky and or no, I guess it wasn't then. It was after they got out of the bunker with Zola and then they go to Sam's place.
Yeah.
But when she's like, you know, if it was down to me to save your life, would you trust me to do it? And he just looks her dead in the eyes and he goes, I would now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that. But so with that in mind, I mean that whole segment goes on for I think it's like a 3 to 5 minute scene.
Yeah, because they get in the truck afterwards,
And they still have good character moments after the truck to where like, but I
could have made it shorter.
could have made it shorter, but I also understand why it is where it is.
Yeah. Well, and this is me trying to defend Civil War more, but like
This is now the Civil War podcast,
Yeah.
I guess.
well, the scene where they're fighting, like in the airport, the big main scene,
Yeah.
and it's like, why is Black Widow with Iron Man? Like, doesn't make sense. But then, as they're getting ready to escape, she shocks the Black Panther in the hangar so they can. I was like, because the whole time I'm like, you are on the wrong side. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, why would you have all this character arc and then
I totally knew she was gonna turn coded at the last second.
I had no idea.
I
And then when
totally
she
knew
turns
it.
into shocks him, I was like, yes! Like, you should have done that in the first place.
I like that because it follows that through line of like because so much of Natasha's story arc revolves around like she doesn't have people. She
Right.
left the Black Widow program, left the KGB,
Yeah.
came over to Shield, and so she doesn't really have connections with people.
Yeah.
And so the Avengers becoming her family, like that whole thing that they make that huge point about in Endgame.
Right.
It's so cool to see her go from, okay, we need to keep the team together. I need to keep my family together.
Yeah.
To realizing like, yes, that's important, but like this is the person that I am most connected with.
Yeah.
And so she makes that conscious decision like, nope, I know Steve. He's on the right track here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get in his way.
And it makes sense, too, in Endgame why they keep Steve and Natasha together and everyone else disappears. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, where I feel like Winter Soldier falls, and then I'm curious your guys' opinions as well. Honestly, I think this is like a solid 9, which I think is one of the few movies we've talked about that hits that high. The other one, you can't see it. I'll throw it on screen here. Raiders of the Lost Ark is probably a 10 for me. And I've talked about this a lot when I talk about my rating. I don't think watchability is necessarily a factor that plays into it because
Agreed.
I don't know. There's just some movies you can't, and we use Boys in the Hood as a reference. I can't watch Ricky die over and over.
Spoiler
and over.
alert. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah. But this one, like, it's just very, for a Marvel movie, is really, really intense. And the action sequences, I think, are almost perfectly done in compared to, like, other action movies. So for me, it's definitely a 9. I mean, it's probably, like, top 5 favorite movies of all time.
Wow.
Like, if I get asked the top 5, like, take movie to an island, you can only watch those. Winter Soldier is probably up there.
Wow, that's awesome.
What about you?
I would say top 9, and I kind of the interest like I would definitely give this movie a 9 out of 10, especially comic book wise. Like it's definitely like this is a really, really solid movie. It's definitely there's a lot of rewatchability with this movie. So I could totally see kind of like you where it's like it finishes and just being like, all right, I want to watch it again. I
turn it on again.
I really like how like the pacing. The pacing is really good for this movie.
Yeah.
Even when it's a scene of Robert Redford's character talking to the holograms, like there's still so much like that was a Zoom call before Zoom.
literally.
But no, it was super engaging. So comic book movie wise, I would definitely give it a 9, and I think that there's a lot of rewatchability for it.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Anthony?
So I'm biased as hell, and I'm going to give it a 10.
Ding, 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 ding.
For frame of reference, like one, I'm not like super, like we were talking about before we got on the pod. We were talking about how much we liked 300, even though it's not a good movie, it's entertaining. So that's kind of the frame of reference that I come from. Winter Soldier, I firmly believe, is a good movie. I will say, as a poli-sci nerd, I do kind of wish they would have gone in a little bit more on like some of the actual like moral questions that they raise in that movie.
Sure, yeah.
But that's just kind of a Marvel thing. They raise the moral questions, make you think about it, but they don't really extend that dialogue. They're just kind of like, yeah, you guys can run, take this and run with it. But
they start the Reddit thread, but they don't add to it.
Exactly. Exactly. But as just like a character study of a character that's really dear to me, and just sort of the values that movie kind of imparts, I think it is just such not like groundbreaking in some like, oh, this is the new big thing, but like I mean you kind of look at how after Winter Soldier and how people responded to that, like they kind of started making the movies a little bit more grounded. I feel like there was definitely kind of a shift to kind of emulate that in a way.
But I think kind of like with what you were talking about maybe before about how like Guardians, though, like when Guardians really came out, like it felt like there was kind of this shift towards comedy. When watching this, it's just like there's not a really
the comedy that's in there is, and that's another thing too, is it's like I feel like the dialogue is really well done in that movie.
I agree.
Pretty much like any of the conversations the characters have with each other sound like very human, reasonable conversations.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that can be really difficult to pin down in movies, but all of the characters just felt like people. The story, the stakes were there. It was grounded enough that you couldn't like, I could absolutely see like a real world government doing what SHIELD/Hydra did in that. Like, there's just so much of that movie that I feel like you can chew on after you've watched it and come back and still find new things you can make connections on, and that's a huge thing for a movie for me. So hence the 10.
Right, and I think too when we reviewed the Avengers, check it out, Spotify, YouTube. One of the gripes that I don't know if we collectively had, but I had, was the dialogue. I felt like the dialogue could have been better. As an example, like
I don't think we touched on it directly, but yeah, 110%. It was just the dialogue was used as a vehicle to push quips.
And Thor like spoke. And
verily,
there's arguments for why he did, but he's like, a throne would suit you ill, brother. It's like, just fucking talk normally.
It's the same reason that I talked about how I wasn't super huge on Thor for so long. Like like I said, I didn't really care about Thor until like they kind of started humbling him and making him a little more like
a human,
a person. And like I guess that's kind of the point. But I get that.
Yeah, it was odd. So the last question I have for you though is just to give us a comparison of another 10. Like, what's another movie you would rank as a 10?
Yeah.
Just so for a point of reference for us.
Another one I would rank as a 10. So, honestly, I know we kind of talked about this off the pod, but the old John Carpenter's The Thing is actually a 10 out of 10 for me.
It's really good. Do you want to talk a little bit about why it's a 10 for you?
So,
without spoiling, maybe?
Yeah, particularly the performances, the way that the characters are written. Czar knows exactly where I'm going with this. We're having this brain connection right now, and Jared's like, what the fuck are you guys talking? Okay. Just the way that everybody interacts and everything feels, not in like a, I want everything to be realistic way, but like when you can kind of see that the movie is like basically a facsimile of how actual people interact.
Yeah.
It's really satisfying. You can really take away from those kinds of performances and really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing. I mean, pacing comes into that too, the actual writing of the film, the way it's filmed.
The music of it.
Yeah.
Dun, dun.
And that's another thing. Like with like Winter Soldier, that is to this day one of my favorite Marvel movie soundtracks.
Yeah,
I have at least like 3 of the tracks from that song or from that movie are in my like running workout playlist.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not like the Avengers theme. Like the Avengers themes, it's iconic, but
it's different.
With Winter Soldier, it's a different feel.
They went very martial. And that was really interesting because it's still, they bring back the motifs from like the first Avenger and all that stuff. But ultimately, it's a very like, while they have the orchestra and everything in there, it's very hard hitting rhythmically. Yeah. And I feel like that really resonates, especially with the action.
I think soundtrack is a big thing that people, I think it's important to a lot of people, but maybe it's like looked over a lot. And again, going back to one of my favorite movies of all time, Raiders of the Lost Ark. The soundtrack like is so compelling where like it pans out,
John
it shows
Williams
the map and they're like traveling through the map and like all this stuff. And it's just, I think too, when it comes to a favorite movie, and feel free to disagree with me, but for me personally, maybe this is me just being kind of like vain, but it's like, holy shit, what I would give to be Indiana Jones. Because I was like a huge history nerd and things like that. And I feel like, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I feel like there's a lot of elements of Captain America that you draw to.
If I could, speaking even kind of tying back to the soundtrack there, but the scene after the elevator scene when he's taken off
Yeah.
and he's on the motorcycle and like where it starts and Jasper Sitwell's like, are you kidding me? Lock down the bridge, and they show the doors shutting, and he just jets out on the motorcycle, and the music's like dun 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 dun, and then it kicks into the like fanfare when he's literally launching himself on top of this jet and taking it out with his shield.
Oh, that's so sick.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
And the way that the music kind of played into that, it's like when it's like intense and grounded, it's like, oh, we have this like steady beat. And then the second that it's like, oh, this guy is using his fancy shield to take out a fucking jet, then it kind of kicks into the more fanfare and the orchestra and everything, and the way it all comes together with him superhero landing with the shield on the ground. It's so cool.
It is really cool.
I 10 out of 10. I wish I could be Captain America, obviously.
Yeah.
I actually had a conversation with someone about that where they were talking about like things that you really do love. Like maybe there could be a correlation of like, oh, well, you want to be like what character inspires you?
Right.
So that's why I really like having you on with Captain America or Marvel or anything like that. Is it's really easy when talking to you to see like that type of character and the qualities and everything of wanting to possibly strive like them.
There's clear passion behind what you're saying. Well, I'm curious. I'll have you kind of end things out, Czar, because one of the things you had mentioned on the episodes is I asked you what a 10 looks like, and you said Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. I think that the reason why it's a 10 for me is there's a lot of rewatchability with Jurassic Park.
Absolutely.
And I think that just like what Anthony said, the characters are real. Like it's a lived in area. Like each character,
dinosaurs existed. Like,
right, exactly. Each character like brings something to the table. Like, you know, you have Ian Malcolm as the cocky scientist. He has one of my favorite lines where it's just like, well, Disneyland always broke down. Yeah, but John, the pirates didn't eat you when they broke down. Pirates of the Caribbean. Like it's every character has their own little quirk.
Yeah.
The special effects are amazing.
For its time?
For its time still,
wow.
the build up to the T-Rex, because you don't initially see the T-Rex. Like they're like, oh my God, why aren't the T-Rexes out? And it's like, oh, just you wait.
Yeah, one of the scariest things is when something is there, but it isn't. And you're like, because what it's playing into is your own imagination. So it's like, for me, especially, and we'll get to October and we'll talk about this, I'm afraid of my brain because of that. And so when movies allow me to use my mind,
Your imagination.
I'm good.
And that particular example is cool because it kind of plays on the way they treat Jurassic Park is it's like any old zoo. So it's like, it's like, oh, the bears aren't out right now. Oh, the T-Rexes aren't out right now.
Yeah.
And then like they kind of play it off like that in the moment. And then later on it's like, oh, the T-Rexes aren't out right now.
That reminds me of in the scene, I don't want to talk about too much, but when they take the goat and the goat's in the zoo and they're like, what are you doing with that goat? And they're like, it's raptor feeding season, and you just see the branch, like all the branches, and they're just like watching. And one of the persons is like, "I'm not hungry anymore."
Yeah,
Like that's a 10 for me because there's rewatchability. The soundtrack is a dun 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 dun. Like the music of it.
That was John Williams too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Just to throw another one in the mix, another 10 for me is Empire Strikes Back.
Oh fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
as it should be for everybody.
Yeah, that's the type of like Star Wars for me is like with Jordy, who was recently on for The Last Jedi.
Check out the podcast.
Yes, please. December we usually try to watch like the Star Wars movies. Like there's something really like Christmassy about it. So that's a 10 for me. Is just it's like the rewatchability, the like I don't want to be pretentious, but like the majesty of it. And I don't know. It's one of those movies where I saw it as a kid and I was like, this is amazing. And then even as an adult, I'm like, I'm not looking at my watch. I'm not looking at my phone. Like it's just like. I just love it.
Yeah, it's great. Well, Anthony, has been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you for having me again.
Thank you so much for
Always a
coming.
pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Great
go
choice.
head to the bottom of the page, like the video, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. We're here every Sunday. Every Sunday. Yeah, this has been so much fun. This has been great. We'll see you guys next week. Adios.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.